Welcome to Caleb Can't Read. I'm Jordan Rabel. Stop doing it.
I'm Caleb Terrence.
Motherfucker. It doesn't feel that good.
It feels really good.
It's not that good.
So what do we did we already do the bit? Did we
What?
Did you say welcome to Caleb Can't Read?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, I'm Caleb Terrence.
I can't remember if you said that already. Couple of goofballs like Abbott and Costello, I'd say, hey, do you know who Abbott and Costello are? That's my segue for this because I wanted to make sure that you know who Abbott and Costello are.
I don't.
Oh, really?
I mean, I've heard this name. Is it like
you know Laurel and Hardy or hear about that?
Like the Hardy Boys?
Yes.
Like from South Park?
Yes. This is Abbott and Costello were like that. They were two detectives.
Okay.
But they were comedic.
But they were comedic detectives.
It was Key and Peele. They were the Key and Peele from back in the day, but also white.
Key and Peele are detectives?
Are you detecting my sarcasm?
No, I'm hoping that you, my friend, will give me genuine information.
I'm gonna skip over it now. So, speaking of Abbott and Costello, let's get started, shall we?
I don't know. You tried with the. At least you put effort into try for a segue, and that.
It was a try for a sec. I mostly do well with the fucking segues.
You don't.
I do. I think about it all the time, and I go, you know what? This is going to be a great one that Caleb will absolutely. Like he's going to recognize that this is a segue. He's going to be able to spell segue correctly. Do you want to give it a shot?
Can you?
Yeah.
Do it.
No, this feels like no, that's correct. I just want to make sure that you could.
No, I just don't believe you can either.
Segue. That's how you spell segue. You're thinking of the thing that you stand on that with Paul Blart. That's different. That's a segue.
I never think about Paul Blart.
Why?
Why do you think about Paul Blart?
Oh, we look alike. Well, anyway, let's get started, shall we?
All right, let's go. Come on.
Shirley Hardy Jackson was born December 14th, 1916 in San Francisco to her parents Leslie and Geraldine. By the time Shirley was born, her family name already had a bit of weight to it, as their lineage consisted of a long line of famous architects. As Shirley put it, quote, "My grandfather was an architect, and his father, and his father. One of them built houses only for millionaires in California, and that's where the family wealth came from. And one of them was certain that houses could be made to stand on the sand dunes of San Francisco, and that's where the family wealth went." So basically, the Jackson family had a lot of wealth at one point, but it was all quite literally sunk into the housing projects of what is now the Sunset District of San Francisco, which is all built on sand dunes. When the 1906 earthquake happened, it killed a lot of people in the Sunset District because their houses were barely able to stand as it was, much less just be shook a whole bunch. You ever know anybody with like an ant farm? It's always something that's in cartoons. I've never actually seen anybody with a real life ant farm though.
No, my house is the ant farm.
Yeah, it's
been better this year, but yeah, and it's pretty bad. It's just missing the transparent walls.
You're gonna find out that it's also a termite farm then if you do that,
dude. Fucking last year they're like dropping from the ceiling in my sleep. It was insane.
Oh, that's disgusting.
So yeah.
It's better than like the stories that I heard from like my mom tell when she was like, yeah, sometimes you just feel a plop on like on your legs when you were asleep, you know, where she was growing up, and she looked down and there's just a fucking rat looking at you and you just fuck God, fuck, damn it. But apparently her kicking her legs a whole bunch to knock the mice off crossed wires in her heated blanket, and it fucking caught fire too. She had a pretty good run of bad luck.
Yeah, I think like the difference now is like previously in living situations I've had, there's been a large disgusting pile of something and it's covered in ants and it's foul. You know what I mean? But then when you actually try to keep a place sanitary, now the ants are confused and they're everywhere and they're looking and they're pissed off. If they don't have something to eat. I don't know what to
do about it anymore, you know?
Like, it's like, oh, I guess I better go back to just being a piece of shit. That was working out fine. I know how to do that.
I've always wanted to shake one of those ant farms, and that might be cruel, and I know it's just ants, but it's just like you see all their hard work, and I just want to see what happens when you just go like an Etch-a-Sketch, you know what I mean?
You stress them out. You stress out them out.
Which makes me almost feel bad, and then I think, they're fucking ants, and I don't give a shit. But I don't know.
There's
got to be YouTube videos where somebody does it.
It's not good. I mean, it's not like you're like talking about starting from shooting squirrels and building your way up or anything. But like, But it's a little.
I mean, pulling wings off flies sounds gross and cruel to me. That seems fucked up. But like,
is it
with
because
ants,
it's causing pain to something for literally no reason?
Yeah, exactly. Does it do that with ants?
What else would it do?
I don't know.
Why
a source
else
of enjoyment for 30 seconds?
Yeah, why would it give you enjoyment, Jordan? Let's go deeper. What's going on?
I just said a small fire. It was fine. I don't understand what the big fucking deal is, all right? Well, regardless, let's move on. Shirley's family still retained some wealth.
Brought it up.
I'm not going to go. Anyway, so regardless, Shirley's family still retained some wealth, though not as much as what it used to be. And the Jackson family grew up in an affluent suburb of San Francisco called Burlingame. Now, growing up, Shirley had a strained relationship with her mother, Geraldine, as her parents had married young. And as much freedom as Shirley's mom was hoping for in the married life, she immediately became pregnant with Shirley after marriage, which really bummed her out. So, of course, Geraldine took it out on her kid. But she figured once Shirley was old enough to go outside on her own, Shirley would at least be able to stay out of her hair once she made a few friends. However, Shirley Jackson did not like playing with other kids, instead opting to stay inside to write short stories. As her younger brother Barry would put it, their mother was a, quote, deeply conventional woman who was horrified by the idea that her daughter was not going to be deeply conventional. Why would
her right.
Because this is the 19...
Okay.
Whatever.
19 fucking...
19 olds,
it's
and
the
they're
fucking
just...
16, 7, I don't fucking know.
You better look the same as everyone else, motherfucker. Yeah. By the time Shirley hit puberty, she gained weight quickly and was again given a reason not to go outside, which pissed her mom off even more.
You go outside all the time and you're just fine.
See? That's what I mean.
It's all right. It's okay. But
I was thinking about telling you...
God, how would you have lived back in 1680, whenever the fuck this is?
Quite lavishly. Quite lavishly.
Oh,
You're kidding me? I would have had a fucking pocket watch and everything and just go...
Yeah,
I would have just lived at the train station.
Yeah, man, I did not think ahead when I tried to roast you there about how quickly that would U-turn.
Yeah, I actually moved past it when we were talking about shaking up ant farms, but torturing animals, setting fires, and I can't remember what the last one is. They're the three main forms for psychopaths as children. It's called the McDonald's trio, and I didn't want to let you know about that. Well,
I'll have the McDonald's trio.
Oh, it makes me happy. I guess
so what?
It makes
Never mind.
Well, not only that, but Shirley also wasn't super keen to the family's more religious side either. You see, Shirley had a grandma whom everyone called Mimi, and Mimi was a believer in Christian Science. We talked about this before, can't remember when, it might have been Helen Keller, but it was like, science is real, but scientists have it wrong. The only real science is that you can control God's love. You get it? It feels it feels a little heretic to me, honestly.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't go into how stupid it is, and just... I feel like anybody who's listening understands, you know?
Just, I feel like if you're giving units of measurement,
it's not
something else called like prayer units or something, it's still science. Like, you can call it whatever you want.
It's like, no, it's not. It's just not correct science. It's not... This isn't a system of belief. It's a...
Well, so like...
Anyway.
Her grandma Mimi once claimed to have broken her leg and healed it overnight using prayer. You know, that's Christian Science, I guess.
Did you just bang your fucking shit on a hitch real bad and then?
Yeah. Well, Shirley was like, your leg wasn't even broken, dude. It was a sprained ankle. And to Geraldine, her mom, contradicting her mother was just another thing made to piss her off. Now, as a whole, it was Grandma Mimi's fanaticism that really turned Shirley off of religion, but she would later take these experiences and incorporate them into her own writings, understanding that people go a little crazy as soon as you introduce a religious theme. When Shirley hit her senior year of high school, her family relocated to Rochester, New York, where she graduated from Brighton High School in 1934. And as much as her mother seemed to want Shirley to be outgoing in her younger life, Shirley would now be overly supervised by her parents because if she's going to be a shut-in, she better be studying to be the best student there is. So when Shirley was looking at colleges, her hand was kind of forced to attend the University of Rochester, where her parents, especially her mom, could keep an eye on her. All of this must have been too much for Shirley because just as quick as she started college, She ended up taking a year off to relocate to Syracuse University instead, 90 miles away.
I mean, I'm sure that was...
I mean, I fucking would have. In the age of no, like, cell phones and no internet, like, oh, sorry, the only way that you can reach me 100 miles away is if I happen to be walking by that particular payphone. Sorry, you know.
Like, now you're going to have to pay at least a little bit of money to mail me something if you want to fat shame me.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I wish my mom would stop sending me mirrors. This is really mean.
Make you think twice about it. At least make it good, you know? Like, if I had to pay money every time I made a fat joke about you, like, I'd make sure they were all
I should
gold.
absolutely have a fat jar in here.
No.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to spend it on butter. Fuck you.
That's not how it works. It has to be forced by something outside of your control, because you control nothing, fatty.
I control my car all the way to the fucking drive-in.
Control your fucking diet.
Control your height, bitch. Well, it was here, perhaps for the first time away from her mother's watch, that Shirley actually began to flourish socially as well as creatively. She not only received her bachelor's degree in journalism, but was very involved with the school newspaper as well, which is where Jackson published her first short story about a teenager's suicide attempt. So, maybe a good thing she had a little change of pace from her parents. But it was working at the school newspaper that Shirley Jackson met a boy 3 years her junior by the name of Stanley Edgar Hyman. Don't laugh. Don't laugh. It's a proud name.
Oh, man.
What?
I realize...
What?
I think... So the bit, they just named that after a dude?
Actually, fucking
like,
probably.
Clearly, if it's a name, they weren't like... Are other parts just named after other dudes?
Fucking maybe.
Let's look this up later.
I don't know.
I wish we didn't get kicked out of sex ed for giggling.
Oh, yours was for giggling? So Stanley had apparently thought Shirley's work was so brilliant that he declared out loud to everyone that he would someday marry her. Which is a little weird,
Is it the one, just the short story about suicide? Or?
Yeah. I mean, she had some journalistic articles as
okay.
well. But it's like, yeah, it's a little strange, dude. Well, once Shirley Jackson and Stanley Hyman...
If it's just the short story, it's like, I don't think you should be anything but concerned about this person right now. Like...
Well, once they both graduated from Syracuse, they did in fact marry in 1940, when Shirley was about 23 and Stanley was around 20. They moved around a bit, trying to stay close to family in New York City, then spread their wings a bit further out to Connecticut, then doing the right thing and fucking off as far as they could to North Bennington, Vermont. The area was affordable enough that while Stanley took a teaching position at Bennington College, Shirley could stay at home and begin her work as becoming an author. And while she worked on her stories, Stanley was gaining a reputation as a known literary critic himself. They really immersed themselves in the writing community, gaining a library of around 25,000 books and having friends such as Invisible Man author Ralph Ellison as well. But apparently while Ellison and Stanley fought all the fucking time, they really admired each other's work. Stanley even helped Ellison shape some of his earlier short stories, and Ellison was even godfather to at least one of their kids. Over the next 10 years, Shirley and Stanley would altogether have 4 children: Lawrence, Joanne, Sarah, and Barry. But Shirley and Stanley's relationship was honestly far from great. Stanley was constantly sleeping with students, and even though Shirley, of course, hated it, she agreed to his proposal for an open relationship, though it seems that was a little one-sided. Usually is.
Yeah. I mean, unless you start with that, I feel like it's going to be a one-sided thing.
Yeah, and though, I will say this, like, the dude is, you're out of college, so people are usually, like, 18 to 22, 23, 24, depending on, like, what they're going for. He himself is, like, in his early 20s. It's still, cheating with people your own age, but it's a weird dynamic.
We can still just call him a douchebag. Like,
he's still a dickhead, but
it's
an
asshole without, like...
Usually, though, when I hear about teachers sleeping with their students, they're, like, in middle school, you know?
I suppose, yeah, normally on the podcast, at least, like, our bar for this is like, oh, he's diddling, you know what I mean? And
yeah.
And then we can get real...
I want to say,
like,
it's that weird dynamic of...
yeah, he still sucks.
Yeah. It's like that Indiana Jones movie where all the girls are like fluttering their eyelids at Indiana Jones while he's in class. You know what I mean?
I think it's just the one girl.
Yeah, it's the one. But in the script, I want to say that they did give her an age, and she's like she might be way young in the script. And like, luckily they got somebody who looked of age to be in college, but I don't think she was in the script. I don't know. It's weird. That's what I mean, though. That's usually the dynamic.
Hey, what? No, I wrote that to be weirder. What the fuck?
George Lucas, I think maybe you should stick to sci-fi, dude. Well, it wasn't until 1948.
Fuck this guy.
Yeah. It wasn't until 1948, at age 31, that Jackson published her debut novel called The Road Through the Wall. It's a semi-autobiography about her childhood in Burlingame, San Francisco. According to Jackson, a writer's first novel has to be the one in which you get back at your parents, and she definitely did that here. The book itself is comprised of 3 stories, all dealing with the people of Pepper Street. Their community is separated from the rest of the world by a giant wall, which is to soon be torn down to build more housing. The parents of Pepper Street, however, see this as a problem, since they have grown with prejudices over those outside their own community, something no doubt passed down to them as they themselves pass it down to their children.
It's a bit ham-fisted, but continue.
Yeah, it's going to be. Already, the only rental unit in the community is seen as a threat, before the wall is even destroyed, just because a rental means the family must be poor.
Wait till y'all hear about housing projects. You're gonna lose your fucking mind.
Yeah, I've built housing projects. It's a shed. It's a project for my house. That's what you mean, right? Slave quarters?
Oh, buddy.
The mother that lives in this rental unit is sickly, and one of her 2 daughters is mentally disabled, while the other one, Beverly, cares for both her mother and her sister. The most popular girl on Pepper Street soon learns of the family's hidden wealth, and she and her friends befriend Beverly only to use her and secretly hate on her whenever her back is turned. Kind of sounds like something that could have happened to Shirley.
What they use her for?
I imagine like, hey, can you pick up my tab, or do you want to buy gas or something, or hey, can you buy me this snack or something?
That's the end of the.
Huh? No, that's just the first story.
Oh, okay.
But basically ways that I use you.
For just beer.
Yeah.
Okay.
The second story is much simpler. There's a fat girl and a Jewish girl on Pepper Street. And although they both find friendship quickly because they're both outcasts,
Oh, dear.
the fat girl's mother forces her daughter not to be friends with the other girl just because she's Jewish.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere near
And
this.
she has no choice but to comply. That also sounds like something that could have happened to Shirley, especially if Shirley's the only one in her family that's just like, yeah, religion's kind of stupid. Then it's like, I feel like she's seeing past the Jewishness.
Anytime there's gonna be a female overweight character, we're all gonna be looking back at this woman like your name just got said in the class. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's like
Finally, the last story is of a 3-year-old girl, beloved by the entirety of Pepper Street, who goes missing. When the neighbors form a watch party, they find the little girl dead, beaten to death. Immediately after, a teenager kills himself, one that no one liked. And although it's not clear if the 2 incidents are even connected, the rest of Pepper Street believes in the boy's guilt just so that they could have an end to the mystery and go back to normal. By the end of the book, the wall guarding Pepper Street from the outside world is destroyed, and the residents' weird behaviors and prejudices will be seen by the rest of the world. Now, although reviews for The Road Through the Wall were good, the critics basically said they'd wait to see what else Shirley Jackson could accomplish as a writer. One reviewer said, "Miss Jackson is no Sinclair Lewis. She is only 28. But she does in her most recent work show a remarkable talent for putting on paper the everyday happenings which at times make life a pleasure and sometimes make it pretty grim." I would like to point out that Shirley Jackson was 31 at the time of her book's publication, meaning that she did that thing where she said that she was younger than she really was, which I find kind of funny. Anyway, little did the critics know that Jackson's career would be propelled into stardom that very same year. The Road Through the Wall was published January 1st, 1948, and just 6 months later, on June 26, Jackson's infamous short story, The Lottery, would be published in The New Yorker. Quote, "The morning of June 27th was clear and sunny, with the fresh warmth of a full summer day. The flowers were blossoming profusely, and the grass was richly green. The people of the village began to gather in the square between the post office and the bank around 10 o'clock. In some towns, there were so many people that the lottery took 2 days and had to be started on June 26. But in this village, where there were only about 300 people, the whole lottery took less than 2 hours, so it could begin at 10 o'clock in the morning and still be through in time to allow the villagers to get home for noon dinner. Somewhere in an old farming community, the people come for the lottery. The children come first as school has let out early for the occasion, and the townspeople slowly gather to the town square. There are rumors that some communities have actually discontinued the lottery, which is stupid, because everyone knows that without the lottery, their crops are going to fail. As an old man in town says, "Lottery in June, corn be heavy soon."
What's the lottery for? Are we getting to it?
It's for
Corn?
pigs. Yeah, I don't know.
All right. All right.
The people are excited, as each family has their name written on a slip of paper and put in a black wooden box for drawing. Soon, someone is selected to draw the name from the box. When Bill Hutchinson draws his own family's name, however, some say it's unfair, that he didn't give a proper amount of time to swish his hand through the box and choose. The box is then emptied out, and 5 pieces of blank paper are placed in the box, one for each member of the Hutchinson family. One for Bill, one for his wife Tessie, and one for each of their 3 small children. Among the slips of paper, there's one with a black mark, signifying the winner. Each of the Hutchinson family draws a card from the box and unfolds it as the town watches, when Tessie Hutchinson reveals her slip of paper with the winning mark. Quote, "All right, folks," Mr. Summers said. "Let's finish quickly." Although the villagers had forgotten the ritual and lost the original black box, they still remembered to use stones. The pile of stones the boys had made earlier was ready. There were stones on the ground with the blowing scraps of paper that had come out of the box. Mrs. Delacroix selected a stone so large she had to pick it up with both hands and turned to Mrs. Dunbar. "Come on," she said, "hurry up." Mrs. Dunbar had small stones in both hands, and she said, gasping for breath, "I can't run at all. You'll have to go ahead and I'll catch up with you." The children had stones already, and someone gave little Davy Hutchinson a few pebbles. Tessie Hutchinson was in the center of a cleared space by now, and she held her hands out desperately as the villagers moved in on her. "It isn't fair," she said. A stone hit her on the side of the head. Old man Warner was saying, "Come on, everyone, come on." Steve Adams was in the front of the crowd of villagers, with Mrs. Graves beside him. "It isn't fair. It isn't right," Mrs. Hutchinson screamed, and then they were upon her.
What's all midsummery?
It's midsummery, yeah. This is, I think, actually the first of the midsummery kind of tales. The true Southern Gothic, if you will.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, this is actually quite a popular one to go over in high school, because they're like, oh, this will keep the kids' attention because it's all dark and edgy. And then everyone still just gets their essays off of SparkNotes. Yeah. The themes in the lottery are pretty obvious, especially when you take into account that earlier tale about Jackson's maternal grandmother, Mimi. People have a mob mentality when it comes to tradition, specifically religion. The story also shows how easy it is to pick someone from a crowd of people to be the scapegoat for humanity's problems. Even the names of the characters are hinted at carrying some symbolism. Hutchinson is probably named after Anne Hutchinson, who was instrumental in creating a religious schism between 2 early colonies of America. There's the Delacroix family, which means of the cross, who are themselves helping to enact a moment of sacrifice. There's even the obviously named Mrs. Graves. And although Shirley Jackson probably used the lottery to make a blanket statement for human nature, the story has since been used as an allegory to anything from the draft to prejudice to several different political policies.
But really, all it is her just defending herself from her parents and being like, "This is why I don't like going outside." Like,
do you know what they do to people out there?
You know,
especially the fat ones.
I don't like crowds for a reason, and you just scoff at me when I tell you why. You're not making any good arguments against my points here. Like,
yeah, my best argument is just make shit up and then have everyone else try and tell me that it's not true, but without evidence.
What?
They can't show me that the things don't exist if they don't have evidence for it, because I made it up, you see?
That's not, I don't
Well, frankly, all of these things, they're all correct about what the lottery is. That was Jackson's point. We continue to find ways to kill each other just through sheer fucking chance. Now, Shirley Jackson had published plenty of short stories before the lottery to various magazines, But it was the lottery that really made her famous, but not in a way that made her admired. Over 300 letters were immediately sent to the New Yorker, most of which was hate mail, and all of which were forwarded to Jackson herself, who said they were filled with bewilderment, speculation, and old-fashioned abuse. She said that out of all the letters she received that summer, only about a dozen were in good response, and even then, those were mostly written by friends. Even her own parents wrote her hate mail. Her mom wrote to her, quote, "Dad and I did not care at all for your story in the New Yorker. It does seem, dear, that this gloomy kind of story is what all you young people think about these days. Why don't you write something to cheer people up?" But to Shirley's credit, the New Yorker did tell her it was the most mail the magazine had ever received in response to a work of fiction. Yeah, why don't you write something to cheer? Because nobody's known for that, Mom. Nobody's known as like, oh, aren't you the guy who just, oh man, writes the most uplifting shit? Yeah, I am. Like, no. Of course it had to be about stoning people to death. Like,
They're just not going to be proud of her no matter what she does.
pretty much.
Like,
Mama, you won an award. How much do you weigh?
Jesus.
But both Jackson and the New Yorker were shocked at the negative response. Sure, the story is a bit dark, but it's good. Yet people unsubscribed from the magazine in droves, and South Africa quietly banned the story from being printed altogether because they were still using stoning as capital punishment. Whoops. I thought we were coming here to get stoned.
That shit is funny because it's like, wait a minute, they'll legally use that as capital punishment, but they're like, wait a minute, no, you can't write about that. That's immoral. like.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you ever hear that thing where, I think it was Orwell's 1984, where it got banned from America for being pro-communist, and Russia banned it for being pro-capitalist. And it's like, yeah, you're all missing the point. It's just about you in general. More than anything, though, the American people demanded an explanation from Shirley. What the hell was she trying to say? And at first, she wouldn't give any response at all. Mostly,
sometimes the stoning is just the stoning.
Exactly. Well, it was mostly because she thought the themes were obvious. But the mail to both her and the magazine wouldn't stop. So eventually, she printed a letter in the San Francisco Chronicle a month later which said, "Explaining just what I had hoped the story to say is very difficult. I suppose I hoped, by setting a particularly brutal ancient rite in the present and in my own village, to shock the story's readers with a graphic dramatization of the pointless violence in general and humanity in their own lives." It was a nuanced way of saying people are fucking animals. Like, that's really it. But Jackson did later admit, years later, that the lottery was about the people of North Bennington specifically, where she and Stanley still lived. But while Jackson was still getting...
That's bold to say when you still live there.
Yeah, well, I mean, like she said, years later.
Like, I don't... Okay, let's not say it's about them, otherwise you would not have said that.
Yeah, the names have been changed. But while Jackson was still getting hate mail for her story, she says there were a handful of letters that were a bit more disturbing in tone. Quote, "The general tone of the early letters, however, was a kind of wide-eyed, shocked innocence. People at first were not so much concerned with what the story meant. What they wanted to know was where these lotteries were held and whether they could go there and watch." I would be a little bit scared about those letters.
That's why we have things like WWE now instead, you know what I mean?
Oh, man, yeah, you're right. Like what a good way to just get your rocks off. Like, just, yeah. Jesus Christ. Your rocks off, get it? Because they killed a woman.
No, I thought you meant because it was really gay.
Yeah, well, that too. That's true, actually.
And like, I don't mean that in the millennial, that's lame.
Oh, man, no, it's just, it gets me so hot and bothered just to see men in active sports. I have to go take a cold shower after because I'm sweating so much.
It's oiled up Jack dudes pretty much in lingerie.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
it.
Yeah,
there's nothing to add to it. That's the entire...
That is homosexual.
It is, like, yeah. And don't get me wrong, could they kick my ass? Absolutely. But so could a lot of gay dudes.
Yeah, it's I think I've said this before. It's theater for people who think theater is gay, so they watch gayer theater.
Yeah. And I did go to a wrestling match. It was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. There was some old lady yelling, and I was just like, oh, do they pay people to, like, yell in the crowd to, like, make it seem like to, like, pump exciting up the crowd or something? Mm-hmm. And then I saw her, like, lower her mask and, like, chug a whole can of beer, and I was like, oh, no, she's here.
Oh, no, this lady just fucking
She is
rules.
In the moment.
Like,
yeah. Well, though Jackson never stopped receiving letters about the lottery, she says that as time went on and the story was adapted to film and even once a ballet, the letters just gradually got nicer and eventually turned to praise. But those were all just letters coming from the public. As far as literary critics were concerned, the story was fucking brilliant. And the publicity, whether you'd call it good or bad, prompted publishing house Farrar, Straus and Company to print a collection of Jackson's short stories. Now, as a little explanation to the collection's original title, there's an old folk song called The Damon Lover, written around the time of the mid-1600s.
The what?
Like demon, but with an A, because that's how they used to spell it. D-A-E-M-O-N.
When you do that with an accent, it's even more confusing.
It's not with an accent, that's just how you say it. Damon.
Say it normal. You're doing the croissant thing.
What's wrong with croissant? You don't like croissant?
Fucking say it normal. Dude.
Not ever since that video drop where he almost made him drop his croissant. Now it's always there forever. Back of my mind. So this was a tale called The Demon Lover, written around the time of the mid-1600s. And while the ballad has been twisted and turned over the years, it still retains its central story. It's about a sailor by the name of James Harris, who weds a woman before he sails to sea. Now, either he dies in a shipwreck or an accident or gets lost at sea, but either way, his widow remarries and has a couple kids. One night, the ghost of James Harris returns, asking that his wife stay faithful to him and take his hand. In most accounts of the story, she does, meaning she wanders into the sea to drown, leaving the kids alone, and in some accounts, her new husband actually kills himself. Now, for her new collection, Shirley Jackson would write a character named James Harris into several of the stories. And in each story he's in, it's James Harris that comes along and fucks shit up for everyone else. Because of this, some have taken Shirley Jackson's version of James Harris to be the devil himself.
Or just her husband.
Oh, interesting. Could be.
Just coming around being a butt.
Yeah, it's weird how in all of these stories, he's just fucking younger women and saying, well, you said you agreed to this. Yeah, that's weird. I never
said
read
it was
past
fun.
that.
You kept asking me for a month until I said yes. Jesus Christ!
You weren't even good at arguing. You just went, please, 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 please,
please. It'll be. Oh, God.
It's gonna be so cool.
I don't understand.
You can do it too, fat girl. I mean, Shirley, you can do it. It'll be fine.
You can do it too, woman who never leaves the house.
I just have a sexy career, and I just hang around these women who don't know any better, who are like newly adult, you know.
Oh man.
Anyway, so so when her collection,
the other shitty part of that too is like it's especially heinous because
dude, and they're newly drinking too in some of those instances.
Okay, you're just getting horny.
No, that's not a horny thing. No, that's predatory, dude. That's bad.
I don't know. That's where your mind went. That's what
no,
I'm
it
saying.
isn't.
No, what I was gonna fucking say was like they didn't have the same fucking. They didn't have good birth control back then either. So he's probably like popping out at least one or two bastards there.
Oh fuck, he might.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't look that far into it. I didn't think about it.
I fucking bet you.
Because Stanley Hyman seemed like the kind of guy to just,
kids used
give
to
the smelly belly,
Kids used to just fucking happen.
Yeah, that's true. You walk too close to a woman and they start popping out.
It just happens. Like, it's just a thing that just happens to you.
It was dangerous back then. I love the now times. People that say that they were born in the wrong era, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
It's actually, yeah. Well, the sweet spot is before... If you're a white dude,
yeah,
the sweet spot is before like social security numbers and things where you could just leave.
You just go to a whole different town.
If for just bastarding it up.
I actually heard about that from my grandfather's brother. He did that. He had a couple families throughout, and they didn't know about each other till the funeral. It was like, whoa, hey, you look just like me. That's wild.
Don't even have to go that far back.
No, they didn't. Actually, well, he hopped quite a few states over, but he traveled for work, which is the perfect excuse. Oh, I travel for work. I'm gone like 6 months out of the year, but I love you and our children. Anyway, when her collection of short stories released in 1949, Jackson hoped to call it, you bastard, she hoped to call it The Lottery or The Adventures of James Harris. And while the collection was originally printed under this title, it was later changed to The Lottery and Other Stories because publishers Farrar, Straus and Company figured it was too confusing for customers if they wanted a short story collection, but the title sounds too much like a novel. Well, either way, none of the stories in this collection are as shocking as The Lottery, but they are very gothic in their own ways. They're very reminiscent of Flannery O'Connor, who was still about 4 years away from publishing A Good Man Is Hard to Find. You remember that one where the dude's just taking a road trip with his bitchy fucking mom? They flip the car, they get some road help from some criminals, and then they shoot everyone and the baby and everyone and drive off.
Oh.
All right, well, that was a very shocking story for the time, but I feel like it was a little bit like the lottery had already happened, so people were kind of like, well, I still hate it, but at least I'm not being completely shocked and pissing myself over it, you know? Well, regardless, the stories are all about shitty people and shitty communities, like this collection that Shirley Jackson made. So it would make sense that Shirley Jackson would dedicate the book, quote, "For my mother and father." Go figure.
Still just firing shots.
Just, yeah, hates them. Now, Shirley Jackson...
Haven't heard from them in a while.
should write out and publish a fucking hate mail for everyone to see. And I'll make money from it, too. Now, Shirley Jackson, someone whose family made their fame building houses, would often have motifs of houses with odd pasts in her stories, one of which was written too late to make the cut for her short story collection in 1949. It was called A Visit and was printed in 1952 in the magazine New World Writing. It's an odd tale about a girl named Margaret who takes a vacation with her friends at their mansion in the country. In this house, there are a bunch of different rooms with their own themes, like one with a bunch of paper fans or one with tiled floors. But in each of these rooms is a painting of the house itself. Yet in one room, instead of a painting of the house, Margaret sees a painting of a little girl with a plaque that reads, "Here is Margaret, who died for love." She later finds an old tower where the family's old relative lives. Her name is also Margaret. And there's a lot of weird cryptic things that happen in the story. Like, one of the characters can't see or hear the others, like one of the others, but everyone else can. And this is just never explained. Like, no one brings it up. It's such an odd fucking story, but the point of it isn't to give the reader any answers as to what's going on, just to create a puzzle that can never be solved. It's just to give the reader a sense of unease. Now, a couple years before the lottery was even published, back on December 1st, 1946, a woman named Paula Weldon went missing while hiking what's called the Long Trail in Vermont, which cuts through the entire state. She'd been a student at Bennington College, and while the police interviewed everyone that saw her that day, including a lumberjack who told friends he knew, quote, within 100 feet where she was buried, no arrests were ever...
It's him. He did that.
No arrests were ever made, Caleb. Paula Weldon has still never been found.
He 100% at least knows who did that.
Okay, Caleb. I know about 100 feet from where...
What? Oh, what? No, I don't think I want to know this.
I'm going to make you an accomplice in this. Yeah, no, it's like, it's that guy. And why? But when they interviewed him, he was like, no, I was just goofing around. And they were like, well, I guess we'll let you go, nomadic traveler, whose real name we probably don't fucking know. Off you go.
We'll just
like,
let you go,
Jesus Christ,
guy,
dude.
mountain man.
Yeah.
Who just happens to know where little girls are buried. We're not going to... Maybe they were just scared, to be honest. That's okay.
They had him under arrest.
We don't know what these people had to work with as far as bringing people in, and they were like, oh.
This dude sounds like he might have been the inspiration for that Cormac McCarthy book, Child of God. Like, well, off he goes. Nope, that's a cave. He just went into the cave. Okay, you know what? Let's just drop this.
Who's that guy? What are we going to do about it? What are you going to do about it?
Yeah. What do you mean, we, motherfucker?
Asshole. Fuck.
People call the area Paula Weldon disappeared in the Bennington Triangle, like the Bermuda Triangle, as if it's some huge mystery as to why people disappear in large forests, or Vermont for that matter. But either way, it was Paula Weldon's disappearance in particular that would be the inspiration for Shirley Jackson's second novel. The publishers Farrar, Straus & Company, now calling themselves Farrar, Straus & Young, even tactlessly described the book on the jacket as loosely based on the real-life disappearance of a sophomore in 1946.
Did I get people all turned?
Honestly, that probably got people really excited about it, and it's like, you know, this feels a little like, if I were a family member that picked that up and was just like, that's kind of tactless, guys. That doesn't feel fun. Well, the 1951 novel Hangs a Man is about a college student named Natalie Waite who goes through horrific physical and mental abuse at the hands of the society around her. By the end of the novel, she ends up lost in the woods, contemplating suicide, but convinces herself to turn back to civilization. It seems like a real fucking bummer, honestly. But the Paula Weldon case must have really struck a nerve with Shirley Jackson, because she would continue to write at least 2 more stories about missing women. And I am going to bring this up. That is the college where her husband worked, but I don't think he was ever a suspect. I'm not calling him a suspect. I just think maybe that's why she felt kind of a connection with it. Hopefully he didn't nail her while this whole thing was going on. That would have been a big red flag.
I feel like she would have written some angrier things.
I don't know.
If she had that knowledge. I mean, that one would have been a bit weirder.
Perhaps, yeah.
No,
I don't know.
I don't like this thread, you fucking...
I'm just saying he happened to work there. I'm just bringing that up. Not saying he had any. There were so many people.
Oh, well,
that went
it's
to
probably
school
why it fucking bugged her, is because it felt closer to home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, although it was looked down upon for women to work back then, Shirley Jackson was doing it all from home anyway, and she was making more money than her husband Stanley, and she was still doing her societal standard by raising the kids. As her son Lawrence would say, she was always writing or thinking about writing, and she did all the shopping and cooking too. Shirley worked on little cartoons about her home life. One shows a woman with frazzled hair coming to kill her unsuspecting husband with an axe.
She's gonna fucking kill him, dude. Like,
I know she wants to.
Would you not?
While another shows that same woman doing laundry, dealing with a crying baby, and dishes everywhere while her husband sits in an easy chair and reads the
She's
paper.
gonna kill her kids and him. Like, fuck. Like,
she changed her name to Andrea Yates.
how you doing?
Yeah.
Oh, I've just been at home with the screaming kids, and then, any silence I have is just filled with my own dark thoughts.
Yeah, that's why I'm leaving for the bar, so good luck. After Shirley's success as a writer, Stanley still controlled the money in the household, even when her earnings far outweighed his. He'd collect the cash and dole it out to her as he saw fit.
Dude, does she fucking kill him?
No, but I mean...
like it's...
just,
like...
just want to bring these things up. In a complete change of pace from her last publications, Shirley Jackson would release a novel in 1952 that were short stories she'd published in the past, but rewritten to take on a more comedic, slightly biographical tone. The book, again from Farrar, Straus & Young, is called Life Among the Savages. Although the narrator is never named, nor is her husband, it's very obvious it's supposed to be Shirley and Stanley themselves, as the kids in the book all carry the same names as their real-life children. And not everything in the book is true, so it's hard to actually call this a memoir, but it was very much written with the housewife in mind, making the chaos of raising children with an absentee father more of a comedy than anything. She even jokes about her eldest kid getting hit by a car, which really did happen. According to Jackson, quote,
Jesus Christ, there would have been like one car in the town.
well, I know, it's funny because he survived.
Wait, what?
You know?
What time period is this again?
1952.
Oh, okay, so there were lots of cars.
Oh, there were a ton of cars, yeah.
Okay.
Although it is still Vermont, so, I don't know. Maybe they called carriages cars back then. Who knows?
They were like the size of carriages back then.
Yeah, fuck.
They were like the
This
size
kid's
of-
lucky to be alive, and she's like, haha, you know how it is. It's like, no, no, I do not.
With no design of with no thinking of what would happen if they hit a pedestrian in that design at
Yeah.
all. Like,
Genuinely, the only people that I know have been hit by cars as children is, I guess, Shirley Jackson's kid and Roald Dahl's kid. That's really about it.
I heard about this one kid.
Because they don't usually walk away.
I heard about this one kid when I was in high school. He got hit by a car, and the force of it popped one of his fucking testicles.
Fuck.
Straight up.
That sucks.
Like, yeah.
I
Like, it unraveled a testicle.
Oh, man, I've got a testicle unraveling story, too. I just don't know if this is the place for it.
Okay, I see. Are you
Basically,
trying to make
don't-
a point there. Oh,
No,
my bad.
just don't. Look, when you get a towel wet and you whip somebody, they get to a point. Just don't whip them at somebody's testicles.
Don't whip your testicles at someone like a towel.
No, don't whip a towel at somebody else's testicles.
Did you cut someone's testicles with a
No,
towel?
it was my my gym teacher's buddy that it happened to.
This
And he was-
sounds a little diddly. Oh, wait. Okay, you just said gym teacher, and I went there. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that
in
was
my
on
head.
you.
Yeah, I'm bad.
According to Jackson, quote, Life Among the Savages is a disrespectful memoir of my children. I know, it's a little bit weird. She
Just
once...
continuing the proud tradition in her family of shitting on her kids.
She once talked about how she couldn't be held accountable for telling the truth in her memoirs, saying, "I very much dislike writing about myself or my work, and when pressed for autobiographical material, can only give a bare chronological outline which contains naturally no pertinent facts." As I mentioned before, she liked to tell people...
I prefer to criticize everything around me. I don't like to turn that inward.
Yeah, she liked to tell people in interviews she was born in 1919 instead of 1916. Just throwing that back out there. But although her latest novel...
Does 3 years matter? You're like 40-something. They matter.
I know. Well, Willa Cather did the same thing. So it's like,
Whatever, man.
But although her latest novel would treat her life like a comedy, in reality, Shirley Jackson was slowly getting angrier at the way she was treated by Stanley and the way women were being treated in general. She was sick of people thinking the nuclear family ideals in the 1950s was a good thing. She published her next novel in 1954 at age 37.
I mean, to be fair, it would be putting her in a better situation than her current one. But
What, the nuclear family ideals? She was in them.
no, she wasn't. Her husband was openly fucking 20-something women.
I think they all were, though.
That's not the nuclear family, Jordan.
Nah, I don't know. Well, no, I think in her case, she's
like, God, this nuclear family. This isn't a nuclear family.
I think what she means for the nuclear family ideals was like being a writer was the only job acceptable because she was a woman. She had to be at home, that kind of thing. And it's like she could have probably been much more free outside of things if they had a more hippie lifestyle. Though you're right, he is kind of teetering on that edge. Like,
it's not
free love, not for you though.
Yeah, which isn't even that's not open. That's just abuse. Like, that's not like.
She published her next novel in 1954 at age 37 called The Bird's Nest, about a woman dealing with multiple personality disorder and her fight for control over her own body. The Bird's Nest was partially based on...
She's gonna kill him.
on Jackson's own experiences, and the conversations the main character has with their psychiatrist mimicked real conversations that she had with her own psychiatrist.
Dude, she's just putting shots across this guy's bow, and he is not... He tell me he's registering it.
He has no idea.
Just like... Good thing I can't read, honey. Like,
I'm not reading a book made by a woman.
I'd be scared if I could.
At this point in her life, Shirley Jackson was dealing with insomnia and paranoia, and while she hoped the audience would have sympathy for the mentally unwell, likable main character, the critics instead gave the book a lukewarm response, saying the book should have had the different personalities be more outlandish, because then it would have been more fun.
It would have been wacky.
It would have been cool. It's like, no. And as much as publishers Farrar, Straus, and Young...
Make them like different Disney princesses or something.
As much as the publishers loved the book, the criticisms caused them to rebrand the book from a drama to a horror, which really pissed Shirley off. Again, just a normal outlook on what it's really like to deal with multi-personality disorder. It's a horror! No, man, it's real. It's spooky.
She is kind of a horror writer.
Yeah, she's getting there. This reception to The Bird's Nest, a story Shirley Jackson held personally dear, led to her taking the reception to the novel quite personally as well. For someone that was hitting their stride as a writer and releasing at the rate of almost a book a year, Shirley wouldn't publish anything for the next 3. While her next book, Raising Demons, was a return to her pseudo-memoir style about her family, it was weird. The book is no longer realistic, as the family has since moved to a house so large that they find 4 other families living in it. The book was well received, but everyone kind of said the same thing, that Raising Demons was just odd.
So wait, like they find 4 other families living in it?
Yeah, because the house is so big, they're like, oh boy, squatters, and they just didn't know. Yeah.
Oh, damn, all right.
Wacky, haha.
Goofiness. Well, they did tell her to be more wacky.
I guess so. Are each of the families just a figment of her imagination? Wait a minute. Regardless, Jackson's return to writing was now being met with the first film adaptation of one of her works. The Lottery had been adapted to the radio in an episode of an NBC show called Cameo Theater once before, but now The Bird's Nest was being adapted to the big screen. Nobody was in it that either you or I would know, but the guy who played the psychiatrist in the movie was the voice of Smaug in that old-ass Hobbit cartoon movie from the 70s.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Yeah.
You still need to watch the cartoon Return of the King.
I know.
I know. The Witch King has a he sounds like Skeletor. It's fucking awesome.
Fucking
And the shitty.
Why was that the scary voice of the 70s? They're just like they're just like make him sound spooky. Come here. Oh no, that's not. That just sounds like my dad. Make him sound scarier. Come here. Oh yeah, that's it.
Because that's what you think of when you look at a skeleton. Is it not?
No, I think that they're voiceless because they don't have fucking voice cords. I don't know. I just hear that.
No,
and I'd be like, oh.
They got nasally voices and they're silly.
Not spooky voice at all. They're silly.
We're getting off track here. But later, after this, we're going to at least show you the...
I'm not doing it sober.
No. The silly Balrog is silly regardless of inebriation.
Oh, I'm up for that. Hell yeah. Can't wait to see what they pulled out for that.
I don't even remember it too well. He might sound like Skeletor too. That'd be sick, dude.
I fucking bet. None shall pass!
No, that's Gandalf.
Not scared. Oh, you're right. I don't like Lord of the Rings.
What's wrong with you?
I don't know, man. I don't care.
And you're fucking lying right now. I know you like those movies.
Oh, the movies are good.
Yeah.
I still have only seen them like once or twice.
Yeah.
It's so long.
It's like not, if you haven't seen them, it's like not seeing the ocean. You got to do it.
I'm still going to force you to watch The Godfather.
I don't.
See?
Get it.
We're in the same. I know.
They're just Italian. It's fine. It's like, why is everyone
no,
so...
they sound funny too. You got to wait for their spooky voice. Gabagool. You know?
Like, it's the same thing with The Sopranos. Like, everybody's just fucking cranking hog over it, and I watch it, and I'm like, they're just Italians. What the fuck? Why does everyone love this so much? Like,
I don't understand. This is just stereotypes on film. Well, either way, while The Bird's Nest...
there's only so many silly meats they can mention before I lose attention, okay? Like...
While the Bird's Nest movie was renamed Lizzie and was given okay reviews, Jackson had no faith in the movie whatsoever. She said she was given a script beforehand and she likened it to Abbott and Costello meet a multi-personality. But actually, she did end up actually liking the final result when the movie came out, though the executive producer, Kirk Douglas, hated it so much, he made the studio take his name off the credits. The movie didn't end up very financially successful, however. Part of the problem was that MGM had released a movie just like Lizzie 4 months earlier called The Three Faces of Eve, and everyone liked that one so much that the public just didn't bother to see this one. It's kind of like once Finding Nemo came out, they brought out Shark's Tale, and nobody bothered to watch that one either.
Ugh. And the Will Smith fish movie.
Wasn't Jada in that too? I don't know.
I really
never
hope
actually
so.
watched it. But they all had weird human face. I didn't like that.
Yeah.
That was weird. I don't know. Maybe it's a good movie. I don't fucking know.
Yeah. Wasn't there a hot fish, too?
I mean, all fish are hot.
Yeah, true.
McDonald's trio. So after Shirley Jackson got back into the writing game with her second pseudo-memoir, Raising Demons, she started work on her next work of fiction, The Sundial. Published in 1958 from publishing house Farrar, Straus and Cudahy this time, the story is of a large mansion called the Halloran House, and the extended family living within it. The head of the household, Lionel Halloran, dies under mysterious circumstances, and the family looks to take whatever they can as an inheritance rather than split things among themselves fairly. However, one of the family members has a vision of the world ending, told to her in a dream by the recently deceased Lionel Halloran, in which he says the only thing that will be left standing in the world will be the Halloran house itself. One by one, the family is convinced to stay in the house and prepare for the end of times. By the end of the book, the family decides to throw a lavish party for the nearby town as a final send-off, and afterwards, the family pastes covers on the windows so they won't have to see the coming destruction. But as the preparations are...
Did they let anyone into the house?
Well, actually, as the they threw a party for the townspeople down below,
Okay.
and then they're like, "All right, guys, midnight, time to get out of here," and then just not tell them like, "You're all gonna fucking die, dude." Like, which also, if they plan on staying in this house forever, why are they wasting all the food and liquor? You know,
So they feel less bad about not letting anyone in.
I guess. This is my setting up an angel fund. You could just pay for the operation. No. $50 though. That goes a long way.
Look, man, you better get running.
But as the preparations are completed, one of the family members dies, again under suspicious circumstances, and the family leaves their body in front of the sundial outside, which bears the words, "What is this world?" The family shelters themselves inside the house as a storm comes over the horizon. Now, although the sundial is rarely talked about, it seems to me that Shirley Jackson was really finding her style with this one. Once again, the story ends without any answers. Was the prophecy true? Who killed these characters? And although nothing is answered, she again gives you all the pieces of a puzzle and lets you decide on what the larger picture will be. And because of this, it led to some wild fucking theories from critics as to what the book actually meant. Some speculated that it was an attack on the Catholic Church. This seemed to actually be Jackson's favorite interpretation of her novel, not because it was correct, but because she knew nothing about Catholicism. She was agnostic. But she said if it really was about Catholicism, she was happy to have gotten so much of it correct without trying. And really, if you're placing your own ideals into stories and finding bad things about it, then that means you probably know there are larger issues there yourself, and you're just projecting them onto her.
Be like, I was just writing about some spooky stuff.
Yeah.
If that relates to that, then that's not like...
Remember that time that Jesus was in a spooky mansion? Remember the skeletons?
What is the Vatican but not a spooky mansion?
That's true. Fair point. Well, as great as The Sundial was, it was greatly overshadowed by Jackson's next novel, released a year later in 1959, in which she would abandon her longtime publishers in favor of Viking Press, whom she'd stay with for the remainder of her life. There are a lot of similarities between this book and The Sundial, as there is a great cast of characters and a lot of unanswered questions, but above all, Jackson gives way to the idea, in both stories, that the houses themselves are the main characters. In The Sundial, we learn the history of the Halloran House. We learn its layout and corridors, and at times we even seem to observe the story from its perspective. But while the Halloran House is just an observer in The Sundial, the mansion and the haunting of Hill House is a malevolent player in the game. And the opening paragraph to this book is actually one of my favorites. Quote, "No live organism can continue to exist sanely under conditions of absolute reality. Even larks and katydids are supposed by some to dream. Hill House, not sane, stood by itself against its hills, holding darkness within. It had stood so for 80 years and might stand for 80 more. Within, walls continued upright, bricks met neatly, floors were firm, and doors were sensibly shut. Silence lay steadily against the wood and stone of Hill House, and whatever walked there walked alone." Perfect description of an anthropomorphic house. Hill House is alone, dark, and insane. And just speaking on this real quick, I fucking love haunted house stories. I'm not talking about houses that are haunted by ghosts. I mean like malevolent buildings. And all throughout this book, Shirley Jackson would write the house like its own character. It may not say anything, but you really feel the anger coming off of the page. Like, I love this quote here. "It was a house without kindness, never meant to be lived in, not a fit place for people or for love or for hope. Exorcism cannot alter the countenance of a house. Hill House would stay as it was until it was destroyed." Love that. Now, the story itself... Oh, was that a shudder? Are you scared?
No, I was that's breathing, Jordan.
I also shudder when I breathe. Fuck.
Jesus Christ, buddy.
No,
it's time. It's time to move.
Yeah, move to the Philippines and get liposuction.
No,
for $20.
your body.
Now, the story itself follows a group of characters, such as a professor named Dr. Montague, a young party girl named Theodora, a timid young lady named Eleanor Vance, and Luke Sanderson, the man who owns Hill House. They're all there at the behest of Dr. Montague, who basically wanted a large group of people who are psychically inclined to stay in Hill House and see if they can find evidence of anything supernatural. You know, like maybe ghosts don't show up for everyone, but if you're psychic, maybe they'll show their face, you know?
If you're a bullshit artist.
Yes. But of everyone he invited, it was only Eleanor and Theodora that showed up, and they are very bottom rung of the ladder here. Luke is just there because he owns the place, wants to make sure no one fucks it up. As far as Theodora goes, she apparently was tested in like a lab setting where she came back with very positive results for psychic abilities. It was a lot like that scene in Ghostbusters where Bill Murray is trying to fuck that student. You remember that? He keeps doing that thing where he's got like the cards up and he goes, "What do you see?" And she's like, "A star." And it's like a square. And he goes, "That is incredible. You were so good at this."
Oh my God, what?
Yeah. That's a terrific scene. But yeah, it's very problematic, and Bill Murray himself is going to hell. But, either way. So that's what Theodora was tested in. And, Theodora guessed all these flashcards with sigils on them correctly, apparently. And anyway, as for Eleanor, when she was a kid, her dad passed away, and every day afterward for a week, stones would rain down on the house. So that's her. It's not even a superpower. It's just a thing that happened. And
I fully believe that in that time period, they'd be like, nope, mental health. No. Superpowers.
Yeah, she was a low one on Dr. Montague's list.
That'd be a wild ass superpower. You just get sad and then stones rain down.
Oh, that'd be so cool. Fucking better start moving to fucking Miami Beach then. I don't know what to tell you.
You get a sturdy fucking house, dude.
Yeah, exactly. Well, how did you get government assistance? Because I just every time I'm sad, it kills people. They give me a steady check every month.
No, but the stones hit you too.
I'm not in a glass house to throw stones, Caleb. I'll tell you that much.
Shut the fuck. Get the
to break the glass ceiling too, because
fuck you, dude. I don't want to. I'm not speaking for the rest of this. Fucking, you're on. Just read this. This. Fucking take me home.
But since then, Eleanor has taken care of her ailing mother, and when she finally dies, Eleanor decides her first act of independence will be to steal her sister's car and drive to Hill House. Well, when she gets there, Eleanor is greeted by the caretakers. Although, greeted is a strong word. They tell her that no one should stay in Hill House after dark. They themselves live 6 fucking miles away and refuse to step on the grounds at night. But Eleanor insists on her staying there, and they take her inside. Not long after, Theodora arrives, and she and Eleanor become fast friends. When Dr. Montague and Luke arrive later that day, they give a history of the house. Hugh Crane built Hill House 80 years ago, and since then, there have been a number of fatalities on the site. Crane's first wife was in a carriage in the driveway when it got flipped and she died. His second wife fell and died. His third wife got ill and died. And then Crane sent his 2 daughters away so they'd be safe. But when Hugh Crane himself passes away, he leaves the house to his unwed daughter, as the other one was already reliant on her husband and his property, But when the sister who now owns Hill House dies without any progeny, she ends up giving the house to the caretaker. Well, the other Crane sister thinks this is bullshit and harasses the caretaker so much that she ends up hanging herself within the house. Unfortunately, rather than the house going back to the one living Crane, it ends up going to the caretaker's family instead. Luke's family, the Sandersons. Dr. Montague and the rest of the group quickly come across little individual hauntings throughout their first day, but with everyone chalking it up to superstition, they don't really say what they've experienced. Dr. Montague goes a couple rooms over from, the rest of the party to grab a chessboard, and when he comes back, he's like, we should probably walk around here in pairs from now on. And they're like, why? Did you see something? And he's like, no, it was just my imagination. And no matter how many times they ask, he doesn't say what he saw.
The premise of this is so fucking silly because they're bringing in psychics to a house that it's homie, it's haunt. What the fuck? You don't need verification
that's the thing,
from a third party here at this point.
Well, that's the thing. In their world, honestly, over the course of the group's entire stay in Hill House, a lot of it can be chalked up to coincidence. We as the readers know this place is haunted and the ghosts are real, but for anyone living in that universe, there are no hard pieces of evidence throughout most of the book. Even when they do find something, Dr. Montague will find something to explain it away, discovering that the weird feeling people have when they're in Hill House isn't from some psychic connection. It's because the fucking walls are slightly slanted in every room, which throws off people's perceptions. But although Dr. Montague doesn't believe in the stories at first, there's this great part later on where he comes up to Eleanor hey, where's Theodora? And she's like, oh, she wasn't feeling well, so she stayed in bed. And he's like, well, where's Luke? She's like, oh, he thought that he saw something in the garden, so he went to take a look. And Dr. Montague is like, do you get the feeling the house is trying to separate us? Which I love. The only time we're even given a good glimpse of ghosts in the novel is when Eleanor and Theodora are walking through the overgrown garden of Hill House in the daylight, not expecting to see anything, as every bad encounter they've ever had has been at night. But instead, they come across a forest clearing where there's this mother and father having a picnic with their little girl. And at first, Eleanor's like, oh, chill, a family picnic. but it only seems this way to, like, only from Eleanor's perspective, because out of nowhere, Theodora starts screaming, quote, "Don't look back! Don't look! Run!" And they take off towards the house, and the whole way to the door, Eleanor is doing what she's told, and she doesn't look back, but Theodora does, and she starts screaming and crying hysterically, and we're just never told what she sees.
That's scary as fuck.
I know. Yeah, no, it's a super cool book, but it's all because of that same thing that she was doing in her other stories, where she's like, I'm going to give you a glimpse, and you make up what the rest is. As the book goes on, the hauntings become more and more violent, but only toward everyone other than Eleanor, while the hauntings Eleanor experience are warm and inviting. And that's when Dr. Montague realizes that the house has chosen Eleanor as its next victim. So Montague insists on Eleanor leaving Hill House, but she doesn't want to go. The group forces her into her car anyway, where she makes a quick, split-second decision to end her own life on the grounds of the mansion so that she may live within the walls of Hill House forever. Quote, "In the unending, crashing second before the car hurled into the tree, she thought clearly, why am I doing this?" The book ends with Dr. Montague publishing his research, and the article is met with almost contemptuous reception.
It's like if H.P. Lovecraft didn't suck.
He does suck. Shirley Jackson said she wrote the story after reading about the exploits of psychic researchers in the 19th century. Apparently, this group had gone to a supposedly haunted house and walked away with wildly different answers as to what had occurred to make the house haunted. Quote, "It was not the story of a haunted house. It was the story of several earnest, I believe misguided, certainly determined people with their differing motivations and background. But their stories had inspired Jackson to design a haunted house of her very own, where she tirelessly read over ghost story.
Come on, buddy. Come on.
But their stories had inspired Jackson
Yeah, there we
to design a haunted house of her very own, where she tirelessly read every ghost story she could to draw the best inspirations. She said, no one could get into a novel about a haunted house without hitting the subject of reality head on. Either I have to believe in ghosts, which I do, or I have to write another kind of novel altogether. In fact, Shirley Jackson had begun sketching blueprints of Hill House's upper and lower floors, and drew partial inspiration from a photograph she'd seen of a house in California that to her looked properly haunted. She asked her mother, who lived in California, if she could research the house for her, and lo and behold, it turns out it was one of Shirley Jackson's very own great-great-grandfathers who'd built the house.
Spooky. Shirley, you have designed a Catholic church. Well, look, I didn't know.
God damn it, Shirley, is this book about Catholics again? No.
Look, man, I don't know anything about Catholicism.
This is kind of on you at
This
this
is
point.
purely coincidence. That's a you guys problem if there's similarities there. Like,
And I just want to talk about how every avenue of this book's design was beautifully made. Even in the book design, things were wonderfully thought through. The first edition cover of The Haunting of Hill House takes the perspective of maybe a child, since all you can see are tall weeds, and you can just barely see the top of the mansion in the background, almost as if it sees you before you see it. And even without the book jacket, the front cover has a large portion of it blocked off in blue, with the book's title barely fitting on the edge of the cover, almost as if the words are peeking from around the corner. Anyway, great book design. The Haunting of Hill House was an immediate success. Critics loved it. To me, because Jackson learned her lesson from the lottery that the horrors can be implied and shown off-screen, so to speak, and the reader's mind will fill in the blanks with their own phobias themselves. I have my own theories as to what happened in the book. The novel was constantly added to top 10 lists that year and has since then become a well-known Bible in horror literature. Stephen King called it one of the finest horror novels of the 20th century, and Neil Gaiman claims it's the scariest book ever written. But Shirley Jackson's success came at a price. Her writing habits kept her up at odd hours of the night, and she was a known chain smoker. By the time Hill House had been published, Jackson was dealing with chronic asthma, lethargy, and even fainting spells, all of which were attributed to a heart problem. She also had an inflammation in her intestines, which meant she was only able to take short, painful trips when she was up walking around.
oh, dude.
So most of the time, she elected to stay in the house.
Yeah, that's all cigarettes. Like, that's just, ooh, yeah.
Yeah, I bet her mom's fucking calling her, like, staying in the house again, fatso. Like, Mom, I'm dying. Okay.
Well, if you would have smoked more cigarettes, maybe you wouldn't have been so fat.
Yeah, back then, I bet her doctor's just like, well, have you tried Newports? You know, like.
You tried switching to menthol.
Yeah, mint really helps the tummy.
Actually, no, there's good news. So they came out with these filtered cigarettes. Now, that'll at least help the intestinal issues.
Look, I'm going to tell you, they're a little bit pricey, but whether you want a menthol, you don't need a menthol. It's all going to be the same cigarette, okay? Camel Crushes are these wonderful, wonderful design, all right? Product of, definitely not the product of its time, but, and let me tell you, if you tear out the crush portion out of the cigarette butt and put them in your bong, then they'll pop under fire and you get menthol weed.
Ooh.
And that way you don't need to add ice to the bong water. This is me as a doctor, not Jordan speaking.
Dr. Jordan fucking sucks.
Oh, man, Dr. Jordan had some real issues.
Like, Dr. Jordan needs to understand that you don't need to push it on one of the
Why did they get rid of those?
What?
Camel Crushes.
They still have them.
Do they?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Oh, man. I'm relapsing. So.
Yeah, dude, fucking, if you're going to go hard.
You remember the ones that tasted like cotton candy? They were like black cigarettes. They were really spendy.
You mean cloves?
Are those clove cigarettes?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know what they were called, and I couldn't find them anywhere.
Yeah, they're weird.
Yeah. Well, now you don't need them because everything you smoke tastes like cotton candy out of a fucking vape pen, I guess. I don't know. I don't want to go back to smoking.
You doing okay?
Yeah.
You doing all right there, buddy?
But.
Just get on the hunt for Zen Laden with the rest of us, okay?
I know. I was made to sin in Zen. But Shirley had been keeping up with her therapy visits all these years, and the doctor, seeing the 42-year-old Shirley Jackson dealing with anxiety and a growing agoraphobia, which is a fear of the outside, her psychiatrist prescribed her with barbiturates.
Stop hotboxing with cigarettes.
I know. Open the fucking window. Well, so to fix all this, he gave her barbiturates. Now, at the time, Shirley Jackson...
More chemicals.
Shirley Jackson at the time was also on a weight loss drug. And whatever special brand name they were giving it at the time doesn't really matter.
She's gonna kill him.
She was on meth. That's basically what it was.
Fucking...
That dude has no idea the danger he's in.
Poking that bear. Jesus.
Well, going out on another date with a 19-year-old. See you later.
Oh, and by the way, Shirley, you might not have a lot of time left. If there's anything you want to do with very little consequence. I don't know, just something you might want to think about. Like,
so the barbiturates and the meth were constantly fighting for control in Shirley's system. And this led her anxiety to grow into paranoia, where she told friends and family that she was being ostracized by the people of North Bennington. To deal with
being ostracized by your husband? No.
No, the people are fucking watching in the goddamn windows.
Is this good? Is this better?
To deal with this, Shirley Jackson started drinking a bit more heavily than she was used to. I promise no one gets murdered in this, okay?
I wasn't expecting this to go in like a Hunter S. Thompson direction. But like...
Yeah, some people can hang. She couldn't, you know? But Jackson continued to roll out the stories, mostly short fiction, but she also published a children's book and a children's musical called...
Oh, these are going to get weird.
It was called The Bad Children. I didn't look into what it was, but Jackson's final novel before her death, and what has often been considered her masterpiece, was the 1962 novel We Have Always Lived in the Castle. The book is from the perspective of 18-year-old Mary Catherine Blackwood, who goes by Marycat, as her 28-year-old sister Constance calls her. They live alone with their ailing uncle Julian away from town, where they've lived in seclusion for the last 6 years. You see, 6 years ago, Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood, along with their young boy and Uncle Julian and his wife, were poisoned at the dinner table as they sprinkled sugar over their blackberry dessert. Turns out, someone had mixed arsenic in the sugar bowl. Only Constance and Marycat remain unharmed, as Constance was known as the only one not liking sugar on her blackberries, and Marycat was sent to bed without supper earlier in the day. Uncle Julian was supposed to have died as well, but although he managed to survive, the attack left him crippled. And now, he was forced to be cared for by the girl that tried to kill him all those years ago. Constance was, of course, arrested for the crime, but with no real evidence to show her putting poison in the sugar bowl, she was let go. And with Constance being ostracized from the rest of town and Uncle Julian too sick to go himself, Maricat remains their only connection to the outside world. Whenever she's in town, though, the people are quick to make snide and unrelenting comments towards her sister. The school kids even have a nursery rhyme. Maricat said, Constance, would you like a cup of tea? Maricat said, Constance, would you like to go to sleep? Oh no, said Maricat, you'll poison me. Over the years, the Blackwood family has become something of a legend, as rumors abound about the treasure hidden deep within their walls, waiting for someone brave enough to come and get it. But since Maricat effectively left school when she was 12, she's a little simple. Being secluded for so long, she grows obsessive-compulsive and practices magic, where she performs rituals at the perimeter of their house, so no one will come to harm her or her family. But even then, her evil cousin Charles one day arrives at their gate, warming up nicely to Constance, trying to get her to be less afraid of the outside world and take a chance on stepping out the door. Of course, he's only there because he's heard about the hidden treasure, and he's trying to find out where it is. Well, one day, when Maricat's had enough of her cousin Charles's shit, she throws his lit pipe into a trash can, which unexpectedly sets ablaze. Like I said, she's simple. The smoke from the Blackwood house billows out past the village, where the people come to help put out the fire, but soon, their animosity towards the Blackwoods leads them to ransack the house instead, looking for money. Meanwhile, Uncle Julian's weak heart can't take all the action, and he ends up dying among the mob. Meanwhile, Maricat and Constance run off into the woods to flee the people that seem to be egging the fire on to finish the job. There's even a little girl that comes running out of the house with a handful of cookies that Constance has made, and her mom slaps them out of her hands like, "Are you fucking kidding me? You know everything she makes is poison, right?" Out in the woods...
Yeah, this woman is terrified of people. This woman is fucking terrified of people.
Who, Shirley Jackson?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, if Shirley Jackson, sent one of her kids over to give me, a Jell-O or something, my mom made you a Jell-O. Why? I don't know, she thought it'd be nice. Thank you. That's immediately going in the trash. I don't trust this woman.
But yeah, I mean, just this whole situation, though. The parallels between her and H.P. Lovecraft and the different direction that she took it, which also insane.
Yeah.
Is very preferable.
I mean, she's weak from a medical illness. He is weak because he's H.P. Lovecraft. That dude was a twig. Fuck. I just thought about the similarities of him and the kid that tried to shoot Trump. They look almost identical.
Dude, they do. Holy shit.
They're the same person. Anyway.
Fucking, okay, Google that shit right now and tell us we're not fucking, hey,
They have that same kind of meep, kind of face, Well, out in the woods, Constance and Maricat wait for the fire to die down and the people to go back to their homes.
Beaker-faced white boys.
Exactly, it's Beaker. But Maricat stews in anger, telling Constance, quote, "I am going to put death in all their food and watch them die." Constance stirred, and the leaves rustled. "The way you did before?" she asked. It had never been spoken of between us, not once in 6 years. "Yes," I said after a minute, "the way I did before." So as it turns out, Constance was the only member of the Blackwood family that Maricat actually liked, and she knew Constance didn't like sugar on her blackberries. As for herself, she either wasn't going to use any sugar either, or she misbehaved and was sent to bed without supper on purpose. Either way, it's revealed that Maricat was the one to kill her entire family at just 12 years old. Constance and Maricat return to their homes once the fire is out, but the roof has burned away, and there are now gaping holes on every side of the building. But the Blackwood sisters decide that there's nowhere else in the world for them to stay, so they clean up what they can and continue living in their dilapidated home. Soon, the forest begins to reclaim the Blackwood estate, and vines cover the holes in the roof, making a perfectly sheltered world for Constance and Maricat to live in. The book ends with the townspeople feeling guilt for their actions, and at first, they start bringing food to the doorstep of the Blackwood family home as an apology. Then, as the stories of their misdeeds start to circulate again, people start leaving them offerings out of fear. Soon, the legend of the Blackwood sisters becomes much more sinister and much more real, and the townspeople continue to leave gifts out of superstition, afraid of what will happen if they don't. And every time they do, Constance and Maricat watch them from behind the vines that surround their home. Once you read the story, it's easy to see the similar personalities between both the Blackwood siblings and Shirley Jackson herself. One is terrified of the outside world, while the other is slowly going insane.
Yeah, one of them is thinking about poisoning someone.
She's just, do you, Stanley, you want sugar for your coffee? No, no, I'm already sweet enough. Anyway, about to go fuck another 20-year-old.
Just like, what are you writing down? Like, doesn't take sugar in the coffee. Like,
Shirley Jackson was alive long enough to see the first adaptation of The Haunting of Hill House hit the big screen. Robert Wise, the guy who made West Side Story and The Sound of Music, had read the book, thought it was amazing, and gave it to screenwriter Nelson Gidding to adapt. Now, the great thing about Jackson's stories is that she leaves you room to interpret, The outline is there, but what you see and imagine is up to you. But Nelson Gidding thought he actually had the story cracked. There are no ghosts. Eleanor is crazy. He told Robert Weiss about the idea, and he loved it. They were so fucking excited. They even traveled to Vermont to meet up with Shirley Jackson, who said she loved the idea, but actually the book definitely is about ghosts. Like, that's the one thing not really up for interpretation. But the movie still sprinkled in the idea that Eleanor was crazy either way, making the ending sort of ambiguous. You can interpret it either way. The house really is haunted, or it's not. Which ended up being the perfect interpretation of a Shirley Jackson story anyway, since there's more than one ending. But while Weiss and Gidding were hanging out with Jackson, they asked her for ideas on a title. The Haunting of Hill House was too long, so she suggested The Haunting, and they went with that. The movie was released August 21st, 1963, to average reviews. It's fine. It's not fantastic, but it's good. Cult classic either way. Now, believe it or not, Shirley Jackson did get better with the issues she'd been exhibiting the last few years, and by 1964, Jackson was a functioning member of society again, even speaking at different writing engagements. She'd also told people of a new novel she was working on called Come Along With Me, which promised to be a change of pace from her previous title. But on August 8th, 1965, the 48-year-old Shirley Hardy Jackson would pass away from possible cardiac arrest following all her years of accidental drug abuse. Per her last wishes, she was cremated. Just a few months after her passing...
Jesus Christ, I bet that motherfucker went up quick. Whoa, shit! Jesus, what is in this woman?
Flame on, motherfucker. Jesus. That's terrible. Just a few months after her passing, Shirley Jackson's final story was published in the Saturday Evening Post called The Possibility of Evil.
Dude, does her husband did he at any point, you think, look back and be like, oh my God, I'm so fucking lucky?
I actually don't think so, no. He championed the shit out of her work.
This is the luckiest man that we have ever discussed on our podcast.
This woman was just a fucking bad day away, dude.
Well, not just that, just the fact that he was like in charge of this woman who was making money.
He's like, all right, honey, here's my check for $2,000. Great. You want $100? Like,
absolute bastard. Yes. Extremely lucky that he got away with all that shit without the consequences. Yes. Also, like, that fucking sucks. Like, there is no God. Like, but man is lucky. Like,
he goes to like rotate the mattress once every 6 months. And he's just like, what the fuck do all these knives keep getting in here? Like, why are there so many knives under the mattress?
Oh God, dude.
So this story, The Possibility of Evil, it's the last story of hers I'll mention because apparently this is a popular one to study in high school. It's about an old woman named Miss Strangeworth who makes her way through town running errands, but secretly she's also collecting town gossip. She's not like asking people about things they heard though, more like she sees things that are none of her fucking business and she makes up stories about them. Like there's a guy who just isn't smiling, so she's like, bet he fucked up his marriage.
Big gay.
So what she's been doing the last year is going home and writing anonymous letters to these people, telling them to fix their marriages or to not spoil their children or that the guy they're dating may be a murderer or some shit, and then mails the letters down at the post office at night. And she does it all within view of her beautiful roses that are just outside her window. A reminder that she's a good person for doing this, and without her, all these people would be lost. Well, one night as Miss Strangeworth is delivering a new batch of letters, she drops one, and a kid sees who dropped it and decides to deliver the letter to its recipient himself, unaware of the nasty gram inside. The next morning, Miss Strangeworth finds a letter of her own slipped through the mail slot of her front door. Quote, her hand did not shake as she opened the envelope
Shit, old man.
and unfolded the sheet of green paper inside. She began to cry silently for the wickedness of the world when she read the words, "Look out at what used to be your roses."
Just fucked with a very poetic motherfucker. like,
Now, it would be...
behold your garden, madam. What?
Now, it would be unfair to not give Shirley Jackson's widow, Stanley Hyman, some credit where it's due. Granted, we did not paint him in the most favorable light, but he very much promoted Shirley's work after her death. Maybe he was afraid of a haunting. Who knows?
Maybe he wanted money.
What? Okay. Again, we're done being mean to him now.
No, he was a piece of shit. Come on, man. Like, that's pretty shitty.
Even while she was alive,
He abused the hero of our story
I
for
know.
the entire tale.
Yeah, I mean, he's no
Like-
Ted Hughes, but like, you know,
If there is a shitlord in this episode, it is this man. The
yeah.
man named Hyman.
that's a proud name. And while she was alive,
Don't bait me, motherfucker.
even while she was alive, he thought she wasn't getting the full recognition she deserved. Her unfinished novel, Come Along With Me, was published via Stanley 3 years after her death in 1968. There wasn't enough there to call it a novel, so Come Along With Me ended up being the little amount she had written plus 16 of her short stories, 14 of which hadn't been put in collections yet. It seems like maybe the intended story of Come Along With Me would have been a comedy about a woman setting up a psychic business. Stanley, to end his story, ended up marrying a classmate of his daughter's just a year after Shirley's death, with whom they had a child. Moving past it, Stanley...
Whoa. Okay. Ooh.
Well, okay, so she was 48, meaning that he was 45 when she died. A year after, so he was 46. This kid had to have been in their 20s as well.
With this guy's track record, you'd have to be in your 20s to think it'd be a good idea to marry him, so.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, Stanley himself died of a suspected heart attack at the age of 51 on July 29th, 1970. Maybe he put sugar in his coffee. I would like to point out, quote-unquote complicated as this guy was, he did pave the way for critical theory in the 40s and 50s, where you have to take into account a critic's history of prejudice on certain subjects, and you can't just take their word for things because they have a degree. Like, that's something we all practice now, hopefully, while reading news articles, but it was very much Stanley that brought that idea into the open. He did do that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Still a piece of shit.
Yeah, still bastard.
Like, yeah, no, like.
Anyway, in 1996, Jackson's family had gotten a box on their front doorstep from someone cleaning out an old barn in Vermont, where they found a crate full of Shirley's old works. A lot of unpublished stories, and even the original manuscript for The Haunting of Hill House. Now, it mostly seemed like she wanted them packed away for a reason, but the kids put them in a new collection anyway, called Just an Ordinary Day. The stories are fine, but they're not really there to polish the lasting legacy of Shirley Jackson, you know? Speaking of legacies, I'm not sure what any of her kids went on to do, which is fine, I'll respect that. But her youngest son, Barry, is apparently a burgeoning musician for a couple of jazz and bluegrass bands in New York. It's good. It's just not what I was expecting when I was researching this. His website is very Neo-Cities, though, if you know what I mean.
No.
He probably needs to go to Squarespace, get a little touch of something modern.
Isn't he old?
Yeah. It's like black background with neon green lettering.
I mean, he's a
you
boomer,
know?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
okay.
definition of one, yeah.
Yeah. Come on, man. Cut him some slack.
Now, there have been several adaptations to Shirley Jackson's work. In the early 90s, Stephen King had tried to get a remake of 1963's The Haunting off the ground and wanted Steven Spielberg to make it. But Spielberg wanted it more family-friendly, and King wanted more scares. So while King was reworking the script, Spielberg gave the idea to DreamWorks, who released The Haunting on July 23, 1999, and directed by Jan de Bont, the Dutch filmmaker behind such classics as Speed, and also Speed 2, Cruise Control. Actually, gearing up for the new Twisters movie, Nicole and I watched Twister the other
Oh my
night.
god, it's a twister.
And yeah, by the way, CGI did not hold up at all. That movie was anyway. Credits roll, directed by Jan de Bont, and I go, oh, it's him.
It's the guy from Speed and Speed 2.
Yeah, that is exactly how I said it too. I go, oh, Nicole's like, what? I'm like, that's the guy who made Speed. She goes, oh. And I'm like, and Speed 2, Cruise Control. She's like, oh. Like a month before the movie's release, Stephen King got hit by a car. I don't think that's coincidence. Feels like corporate assassination to me. Anyway, while Stephen King wouldn't get to write the screenplay for The Haunting, he instead turned the story into his own version called Rose Red, which is one of my favorite fucking miniseries. And I know the 1999 Haunting gets its fair share of shit from the critics, but I love it. Liam Neeson and Owen Wilson, come on. You ever see that one?
No.
Oh, it's terrible. I have it on VHS. We should watch it.
Let's fucking go, dude. I'm game for this, man.
And not to mention the amazing 2018 Netflix miniseries by Mike Flanagan, The Haunting of Hill House, which I tried to get Caleb to watch, but he just couldn't suspend his disbelief on the lady who played their mom looking the way she did after supposedly having 6 kids.
Was that the problem?
Yeah. You were just like, dude, I can't. That woman is skinny as hell. She had 6 kids. Are you fucking kidding me?
I think I just didn't like it in general.
You are so weird, man. So
I don't know,
weird.
man.
There was also an adaptation of We Have Always Lived in the Castle that came out the same year. That's apparently pretty good. I don't know. Never watched it. There was a movie in 2020 released called Shirley with Elizabeth Moss about the time Jackson spent writing her 1951 novel Hangs a Man, but it's been found to be largely fictional. Still got good reviews, though. And although she only released a handful of novels in the 15 years she was alive, 6 is nothing to scoff at either. Shirley Jackson wrote over 200 short stories as well, though it's only a few that seem to be remembered by the public today. And in that time, Shirley Jackson has cemented herself as the queen of horror fiction, where in 2007, her legacy would be remembered in the ongoing Shirley Jackson Awards, given to the best short stories, novels, and authors in horror. Our sources today: Shirley Jackson's Letters Could Make an Errand More Exciting Than Your Entire Life by Scott Bradfield, LATimes.com, July 14th, 2021. The Lottery and Other Stories by Shirley Jackson, Farrar, Straus, and Garreau, 2005. The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, Penguin Random House, 2016. We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson, Penguin Random House, 41st printing, 2006. The Possibility of Evil by Shirley Jackson, blogs.aub.ca, barryhyman.com, and Wikipedia. He kept the right last name. Anyway.
Yeah, that's wild, dude. I wouldn't do that.
Well, that's not fair. You had like 4 names to choose from between all of the commune that you grew up in.
Did you look? Yeah, let's just fucking talk about my social security number too. Like,
you want to?
No.
Does it begin with a 4?
Shut the fuck off, man.
Does it?
No.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Fuck.
You should really have that shit memorized.
You are wildly missing the point I'm trying to make right now.
What is the point you're trying to make?
Fuck you, dude. Bye. Tag Nicole in. I fucking hate you.